He was born in silence beneath the twin suns. Not a prince, not a prophet, just a boy watching the sky and wondering who he was meant to become. His days were filled with sand and shadows, but inside him something ancient stirred. A voice not yet his own, a call not yet answered. He did not ask for war, did not chase greatness. He simply followed the ache in his chest that said he was meant for more. Meant to leave footprints on stars and scars on time. Meant to stand where others fell. Meant to carry the legacy of a father he never knew. A name that echoed like thunder behind every breath he took. His journey was not clean. It was stained with grief and doubt and failure. He bled for every truth he uncovered. He suffered for every lesson he learned. But even when the Force felt cold and distant, he never gave in. He chose mercy when vengeance whispered sweetly. He chose love when anger roared in his bones. They told him the Jedi were guardians of peace, but they never warned him what it would cost. They never said how it would hollow his soul or steal his sleep. They never said he would be alone at the end, that the ones he saved would forget him, that the future he dreamed would be rewritten without him. But still, he stood, on Hoth, on Endor, on Crate, a symbol not of power, but of possibility, a man who believed in the broken, who offered redemption to the damned, who stared into the eyes of evil and said no, not with hate, not with wrath, but with hope. In this video, we will walk through the life of Luke Skywalker, not the parody, not the rewrite, but the man who rose from dust to legend, who fell and stood again, who reminded the galaxy what it meant to be good, and how that legend was buried, not by time, but by those who misunderstood him. Luke Skywalker began not as a warrior, but as a wanderer, a restless soul beneath twin suns, yearning for something beyond the dust and the quiet. His days on Tatooine were filled with silence and simplicity, but his heart was filled with noise. Not the noise of battle, but the call of destiny, of legacy, of something ancient buried within his bloodline. He didn't yet know the Force was whispering through him like wind through canyon walls. He found guidance in the form of an old man with secrets deeper than the dune sea. Obi-Wan spoke of the Jedi as more than warriors, as protectors, as peacekeepers, as ghosts of a forgotten time. And in that moment, Luke's life unraveled and rewove itself into something new. His father was not a navigator, but a fallen knight, a blade in shadow once called Anakin Skywalker. With that name came a burden, and Luke stepped into it with innocent bravery. He followed the call into space, into war, into rebellion. What began as rescue missions and narrow escapes evolved into quiet lessons under starlight. Luke trained not through tradition but through survival, intuition, and fragments of wisdom. His path was not paved like those before him. It was carved raw with every scar and every failure. And still he grew, like a tree in the desert, fed by hope and tragedy. In every battle, Luke sharpened not just his saber, but his spirit. He watched allies die, watched plans fail, watched fear creep into victory. But even when the Force felt distant, when answers ran dry, he pressed forward. Because something inside him knew that the galaxy needed more than soldiers. It needed someone who believed redemption was still possible, even for the darkest soul. The galaxy never made it easy for Luke to become who he was meant to be. Every step toward mastery was tangled in failure, in loss, in truths he never asked to learn. The Force did not hand him clarity. It gave him pain and waited to see what he would do with it. And through that pain, Luke became something the Jedi never truly taught self-made. Dagobah offered no comfort, only cold truths and cryptic warnings. Yoda taught in riddles, withheld in fear, retreated behind centuries of doctrine. Luke learned more through the failures he suffered than the words Yoda spoke. And in his lowest moment, when he confronted Vader and lost, he was forced to see not just the face beneath the mask, but the mirror of his own future. No one warned him what it meant to be a Jedi. Not the crushing isolation, not the weight of legacy, not the temptation of power wrapped in good intentions. Luke stumbled because he was human, because he felt every loss deeply and carried each one like a stone in his soul. And yet, the council he never knew would have labeled him reckless, emotional, dangerous. Victory in war does not erase the wounds it leaves behind. Luke saw the Empire fall but never truly disappear. He watched as systems still crumbled, as corruption simply changed flags, as old evils wore new names. The battle was won, but the war never ended. And in that slow unraveling, Luke felt a different kind of failure take root. He tried to rebuild what he never truly understood, to create a Jedi order without the flaws of the old, without the arrogance, without the blindness. But wisdom cannot be inherited, only earned. And Luke learned too late that some lessons require generations, not one lifetime. He trained students, but carried their fears like ghosts at his side. Ben Solo was more than a student. He was blood, kin, legacy. Luke saw shadows in Ben's heart, and for one moment, fear overtook faith. That moment became legend, twisted into betrayal, into exile, into silence. But it was not weakness that broke Luke, it was shame. Shame that he, who once threw away his saber, now raised it out of fear. The galaxy moved on, while Luke disappeared. Whispers became rumors, stories became scripture, and somewhere in that silence, the hero became a myth. But myths are not immune to grief. He wandered, broken not in body but in purpose, asking if any of it had ever mattered, wondering if he had failed, not just the Jedi, but the galaxy itself. This was not the Luke who faced Vader and won. This was the man left behind by a galaxy that forgot what sacrifice truly means, a man who saved his father only to lose his nephew, a man who believed in redemption and was punished for it. But Luke's legacy was never meant to be measured in temples or students. His true power was not in lightsaber forms or force techniques, it was in his heart, in the quiet defiance of darkness with compassion, in the decision to see the humanity in the monster, in the belief that even the worst among us could be saved. The Force moved through Luke not because he demanded it, but because he listened, because he questioned, because he dared to feel when others shut themselves off. He was the son of Skywalker, but became something more, a new chapter, not a rewritten one, a Jedi not of the past, but of possibility. When he stood before the Emperor, when he saw Vader's pain, when he refused to kill, the Force responded, not with thunder, but with peace. He became balance, not through dominance, but through surrender. That choice changed everything. It echoed across generations. It whispered into every soul that the dark is never final. Before Disney rewrote his soul, Luke stood as the heart of Star Wars, a beacon in the darkest hour, a man who rose from sand to stardust without losing what made him human. He was not perfect, but that imperfection made him real, relatable, eternal. He taught us that strength is not rage, that victory is not vengeance, that love, even when unreturned, is worth fighting for. He showed the galaxy a new kind of Jedi, not chained to ancient texts, not blinded by pride, but alive, questioning, adapting. He could have been so much more. The mentor of a new age, the guide through the unknown, a teacher who allowed emotion to breathe instead of burying it, a master who refused to become a god. That was the Luke we knew, the Luke the story earned. He didn't need to be bitter, didn't need to drink in caves or throw away what defined him. He only needed to continue what he started, to pass on his story with the same courage he once showed on the Death Star. But instead, they rewrote him into something hollow, something small, and yet, his legacy refuses to die. In our hearts, he is still standing, still walking into the dark, still believing that one good choice can undo generations of hate. That is the Luke we remember, the Luke who mattered. The tragedy is not that Luke Skywalker fell, it's that storytellers forgot why he rose. They turned a symbol of redemption into a warning about failure. They erased his compassion and painted him in cowardice, not as an evolution, but as erasure. He was not infallible, he never needed to be. But his mistakes should have echoed his ideals, not betrayed them. He should have stood tall, even in doubt, because doubt was always part of him, but never his master. Luke's strength was in facing pain, not hiding from it. When they showed him broken, they never let him heal. When they wrote his final act, they never let him speak his truth. They gave us a whisper when he deserved a roar, a flicker when he once burned like a star. And in that silence, something sacred was lost. Luke Skywalker was not just a character. He was the soul of a myth that believed anyone could rise. That legacy was not blood, but choice. That light was not the absence of darkness, but the courage to face it. They rewrote him, but they can never rewrite what he meant. And so we remember him as he was, a farm boy who dreamed, a warrior who loved, a Jedi who forgave, and a man who walked into the shadows, not to surrender, but to remind the galaxy that hope is never gone. Thank you for watching the whole video. I make videos because of my love for Star Wars and Marvel. I've been asked countless times how I get my subtitles, and I generate them automatically with a tool I built. That same tool can be used here on my website. It's completely free and doesn't require signing up. My website contains the subtitle generator that is perfect for any video, blogging post, where you can sign up with your email and receive notifications for when I post, and also my 3 channels. Critical Analysis Hub focuses on Star Wars and Marvel movies. Critical Analysis Hub Plus looks at Star Wars and Marvel shows. And Critical Analysis Hub XP centers on video games, like The Last of Us series, Jedi Survivor, and GTA 5. Thank you for being a fan.